Oh, are we
Loading.
live? Yeah, we're on.
All right.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Matthew Coast, and if you're new here, hopefully you're not. Hopefully you've been watching and learning a lot of great things. But if you are, hello and welcome. I'm bringing a guest with me today. I was actually supposed to be on her live stream, and we had some tech difficulties, and so now we are on my live stream. So, welcome everybody. This is Sarah Taylor. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. And first of all, just to apologise for the technical difficulties that we had there. As I was saying to you, I'm not particularly tech savvy, but I was saying it's a good job that you are. So my name's Sarah Taylor. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse, coercive controlling behaviour and post-separation abuse. I spent over 5 years going through the UK family courts, child custody, child arrangements, and I found that an incredibly, the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. And after I got through that, I wanted to be able to help and support other women that were going through the same. And I also wanted to create change so that others don't have to go through what I've been through and so many hundreds of thousands of other women are going through. So I set up my organisation called PEEPSA, which stands for Prevent, Educate and Eradicate Post-Separation Abuse. So PEEPSA has 3 main strands to it. One is to help to reach out and support survivors. And we do this through our peer support groups that we run monthly. Obviously, the women, they discover then that they're not the only ones going through it, that the problem is not actually with them, it's with the system. And, they're empowered by one another. They have useful tips, they can help each other. And a lot of these women have been isolated for so long that it's lovely to have that group community with like-minded others where they support each other. So that's been invaluable. We do one-to-one support as well for the women. We help them navigate through post-separation abuse. So whether that's through stalking, the family courts, harassment, that kind of thing. So we support them through these processes. And we also have a wonderful therapist who's also a survivor herself and speaks openly about that, called Emma Davey. And she comes in as well once a month to run our group trauma therapy sessions as well. So that's what we have for the survivors, so that they don't feel alone and they've got people who know that they care about them and want to help them through this really, really traumatic, difficult time. And then we've got the training to our organisation, which is training the professionals, so the social workers, the judiciary, the CAFCAS officers, the police, and really getting the message out to the multi-agencies that domestic abuse is so it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And it's so important that they can recognise it, understand that coercive, controlling, abusive behaviour, and that they're able to not only identify that when women are in these relationships, because a lot of them often don't even realise that they are, but it's also that they can identify it after the relationship ends. And we know that it is the most dangerous time for victims when they leave these relationships, because obviously the perpetrators are losing that control over them. So sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. I do apologize. I've got 2 golden retrievers sat here with me. I do apologize. But yeah, so it's really, really important that the multi-agencies understand what it looks like, what post-separation abuse is, and how they can actually support the women. And then the other arm then is the campaigning. And you may have heard that recently we've managed to repeal the presumption of contact in UK family law, which I was a part of. The campaign was run by Women's Aid and also Claire Throssell, who led very much in this campaign. And yeah, we managed to repeal that presumption of contact. So the campaigning is working. We're starting to change the culture. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot more work to do to safeguard this new presumption, the repeal of the presumption when it comes into law, to safeguard it, to ensure that abusers don't use it in a way that is not intended. and to further harm the victim. So we do need to put a lot more safeguarding in place around that. And we're working really hard to do that as well. So yeah, that's what we do at PEEPSA. And yeah, we just really hope that it's going to reach out to many, many women who need that support, and that we're able to create real change, both within the law and the culture as well. This deeply misogynistic culture actually within the agencies and the judiciary. So yeah, that's what I do in a tin.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Sarah. It sounds like you're doing some really amazing work. And I know it's very, very important for a lot of these women because, sometimes you don't even know what's going on. If you go into a abusive relationship, if you're coming out of abusive relationship, your entire world can be thrown upside down. You might not know what's going on. You might have been gaslighted into believing some things that are completely not true, or that it's all your fault or you're the problem. And so it's important to find a structure that you can go into that can help you get a better baseline on reality, pull you out of this, maybe some belief systems or thoughts or patterns of behavior that you got sucked into because you were in this traumatic experience, right? And there's a lot of other things that are going on with you as well, and we can talk more about those here in just a minute. So first, I think what we're going to do is talk a little bit about, and by the way, if you're here with us right now, go ahead and say hi in the chat. Let us know where in the world you're watching this from. It's good to see, it's cool to see women from all over the world watching these videos. And so, yeah, let's get started and just talking about, some of the, what is post-separation abuse? Like, what does it look like? That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Did you want to start us off on that?
Yeah,
Sarah?
absolutely. Yeah, Matt. So post-separation abuse, then, I see post-separation abuse as a continuation of the domestic abuse and the coercive controlling behavior after the relationship has ended. So a lot of people, and, understandably think that when a relationship ends, that the abuse ends as well. But unfortunately, as I was saying earlier, it can often not only continue, but it can actually escalate and ramp up. So whereas in a relationship, we see in any, I keep calling it abusive relationship. I should put myself right there. It's not an abusive relationship at all. I think what I should call it is, you are in an entrapped situation, or you're in almost like a hostage situation, really, with an abusive person. So I need to correct myself with that, because language is important, isn't it? And when you are with these abusers, there will be tactics. Okay, so these tactics are used to control that victim and to coerce that victim into compliance. And when the tactics are not followed, when the rules are not followed, there will be unwritten rules that you are expected to follow. And when you do not follow these rules, the tactics they will use will be consequences. Okay, so there are rules, unwritten rules, which you don't know what they are, especially in the beginning. And then there are consequences to those rules to bring you back into under their control. And these could look like, isolating your victim from their friends and family, as you were talking about earlier, the gaslighting as well. So gaslighting the victim, making them believe that things happened that didn't, or things didn't happen that did. They could, that could just be lying. Barefaced lying, for example, cheating. I didn't do that. And they did, but what you will always see is, if the victim steps out of those rules or breaks those rules or doesn't meet an expectation, something will happen to them, and it won't be good. And it could be, for example, that they're walking on eggshells because the perpetrator will create a terrible atmosphere within the house, within the home, or they may leave for days on end and they're uncontactable, leaving the victim wonder what they've done wrong, what's going to happen next. It could be that it could escalate if the victim stands up for themselves and calls it out. They'll turn around and they'll say, but it's your fault. You started this. That DAVO, that, reversing victim offender, they will deflect, they won't take accountability, and they will make you feel like you are the problem just for protecting yourself or wanting to communicate something that's making you feel uncomfortable, etc. So when you think that these things are happening within the relationship, you think, right, well, if I can get out of this, this will stop. But actually what often happens then is they ramp up those tactics. They become more severe. So for some women, you know, it could mean significant harm to them when they leave. They're at their highest risk of homicide at that time. The research tells us this. But if they do get out of it and they do leave and they're safe, they're physically safe, okay, and their children, the perpetrator then will think, right, what can I do now from afar to regain this control over them? And the control will usually be done through proxy, so through third parties, which are usually the multi-agencies, like the police, social services, if you have children, the family courts, whether it be through child arrangement orders or through financial orders, because even if you haven't got children, they can still use finances to cripple their victims, frankly, after. So we see that continuation and that pattern. And of course, when children are involved as well, as I know myself, it is incredibly frightening, because if you're having malicious reports made to you about you being a mother, saying you're a bad mother, you're neglectful, you're harming your children, you're being abusive, of course, the social services have an obligation to act. So they will have to investigate. So you are then put into a process, you know, and having to comply with an organization or you know, the social workers or whoever it might be that are not trauma informed and that don't understand coercive controlling behavior and the dynamics. So all post-separation abuses is this coercive control continuing long, very often after the relationship ends. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts around
I
that.
mean, I can say so much on this. Yeah, I mean, when you go and start talking to people, it's like, you know, a lot of times they're seeing things from their own perspective, their own worldview, right? And so you go and talk to friends, you talk to family, you talk to, you know, different services, police, you know, whoever, and sometimes they're not going to have any idea what's going on there because they're seeing from their own worldview, and they might think that, you know, maybe that you are the problem or whatever. And so it's important to you know, to there. So I put these into 4 different categories. I know that there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can look at all of this, but I put them into 4 categories. The first one's legal and administrative abuse, which is you know, it's like you know, withholding signatures for papers, or, you know, what we were just talking about, which is like weaponizing the police, or, you know, social services in some way where they'll do like you know, false reports, which is what we're just talking about. You know, they might do things that are really difficult to prove, you know, like they will start being late, or they will do things that are like misunderstandings. They won't show up because there was a misunderstanding or whatever, right? And it's difficult to prove that they're actually doing something that is malicious, or, you know, they're trying to hurt you in some way. And so one of the ways that you can kind of protect yourself in these situations is to first and this is really, really difficult, and I know this is really difficult. I've never personally been a victim of this, but I come from a family that has lots of divorced people in it, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
like my parents, when they got divorced, they got divorced when I was 8 years old, and I mean, it was crazy, you know, the things that were going on between them, and it was incredibly abusive. I don't know, you know, I was only 8 years old, so I was kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, my dad's like calling my mom names, and, you know, and then there's these weird things going on with custody. And then I'm over here and it's weird. And then this person just leaves and I'm like sitting here by myself, and, you know, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on anymore.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in many, like my, when my brother got divorced, you know, it was a huge thing. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things, you know, using the child to, like, you know, telling them that this person doesn't love them. And I mean, it was just crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And so one of the things, I've seen this play out, personally, and
Mm.
I know how difficult it can be to kind of have a level head and just be chill and relaxed about things. But it's
Yeah.
the best way to deal with things is
Yeah.
to not get sucked up into it, is to not get, allow your emotions to take over. And then, you did this, and then, getting revenge on them or whatever, right? Which is the natural thing that a lot of people want to do, because they're like, this
Yeah.
person's hurting me, this person's hurting our child, this person's, the bad person, and so I need to, like, fight back. And a lot of times the best way to fight back is to be cool, is to be calm, is to be friendly, is to, be unemotional, because they're trying to get you wrapped up, they're
Yeah.
trying to pull you back in to this mess that they've created. And if
Yeah.
you don't allow them to do that, then that removes all their power, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly they don't have any power anymore, at least in that sense. And so if they do want to get power, they're going to have to go to some other means, and it's not
Yeah.
just attacking you. And so being
Mhm.
calm, being cool, being, just friendly, is a
Mhm.
good way to go, right?
Yeah.
And then start developing a trail, right? So take the trail and start recording it, right?
Yeah.
Start doing everything that you can. Sometimes you guys might not know this, but sometimes uh out there, there's like these apps that are
Mhm.
like approved apps that you can get for custody battles, because this is a normal thing, right? This is a normal
Yeah.
thing. And so
Mhm.
there are some approved apps that you can get, that the courts approve of, that you can use then to communicate back and forth. And the
Mhm.
best thing to do is make it so that all of your communication is through this app if you can, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and anything that they're doing, you need to record it, you need to start writing it down, you need to, take screenshots, you need to, you know take photos, if anything's missed, if anybody, if he shows up late, if there's a misunderstanding or whatever, start logging them. And what
Yeah.
it'll do is, then when you go back to court, you'll have a record of things that have been happening, and be like, yeah, this happened, this happened, this happened. If it was just one thing, or if you're just going off your memory, it's going to be really difficult to prove anything. But if
Yeah.
you've got a record of things that have been going on, you can show that to the court, and they'll be like, oh, okay, like,
Yeah.
let's talk about this, right?
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
is that did you
Yeah.
want to mention anything else about that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And, I think what I tend to see happening a lot, and it was the same with me and, the mothers that I support, and have in the past, is they will they will be completely re-traumatized by the behavior of the perpetrator. For example, like you were just saying there, through text messages. And I think it's so important, as you said, to take these screenshots and to write down all these events and incidents. And I know it's not easy. And, when I was in this myself, I probably couldn't have done it, but it's trying to almost look at it really objectively, and taking those emotions out, which is really hard when it's, when your child could be taken, if you get this wrong, then, if you like. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's so difficult to do that. But I think that is the most important thing, is to be able to chronologically write down and identify a pattern of behavior that's happening. It's like you said, it's not just one incident. It's not just trying to think of the one or two things when you're in court that happened. It's making sure that you have a clear pattern of abusive behavior right there in front of you. If it's through using apps, like I think in the UK we use AppClose, and even though they will use that communication to re-traumatize you, it's still important that whether they're nice on there, when they're not nice on there, that all of it is there. So you can see how they change, how they're up and down, and show that pattern of behavior, their inconsistency, their abuse. And you can look at the tactics through that. You can see the tactics quite clearly through that. But, as I said, I see these perpetrators are deliberately trying to get a reaction through emotion. And every time that they get that reaction, they will use that against you. And I've often seen mothers being pathologized because of these reactions that they're having, which is actually a natural, normal trauma response, when they're being re-traumatized. So it's very difficult to do that, but that is the only way to do it, I think, is to have that evidence in front of you so that the judge can see it concisely, even if it's in bullet point, referencing the evidence that you have. Please see exhibit A, blah, blah, blah. But just have it nice and concise for that judge to see it. They don't have much time to read these things, these documents, because you could have a bundle, thousands and thousands of pages in. So get it as concise as you can and get it to the top of the bundle so that they can see what's happening for themselves and identify it. Difficult, but it is doable,
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to remember too is that you don't have to be perfect, and just to do the best that you can,
Yeah.
it, there's so much to be said about this, and it's a difficult situation. And so, if you're here with us and you're listening to this, it's important to reach out to get some help. That's why Sarah's here. That's why PIPSA exists. That's there's some people in the chat saying I need help.
Okay.
People saying hello. Emma says I need help too.
You guys.
Yeah, I need help too. And and when you're like, this is the first step, right?
Yes.
Is saying that you need help, like being willing to, go out there and be like, yeah, I do need some help, please help me. And, like going out and searching for it and talking to people and, and finding communities that support you and what it is that you're doing. And so, good job on everybody that's saying that they need help. And, just move, just keep moving forward with it here. So, yeah, it looks like we've got people from Ireland, from UK, Denmark, Australia, KSA. I'm not sure what KSA is. So let's see. Brutal term, but true, from Poland. I'm going to butcher your name. Grzegorz says, hi from Poland. Is there any way out? Yeah, so it can be difficult to get out. Especially if you're financially dependent, especially if you're emotionally dependent, your emotions are really wrapped up in the situation. We have somebody on here that was saying, hey, it's really difficult because I'm an emotional person. And it's like, that makes it more difficult because it's, a lot of times your emotions get wrapped up into it, and it's like, it's easy to get triggered and going back to it. And so, one thing I was going to talk a little bit about later, and I think we'll just mention it now since we're kind of on the topic, is this whole like thing where you come out of it and it's like, okay, sometimes I'll get women that want to go back out and start dating again. They want to go back out and, do all this stuff, but they're traumatized, they're traumatized. They get triggered. It's, they get emotionally wrapped up. They start seeing, things that aren't even there some of the times because they're so on alert. Their nervous system is so like amped up because they've been in this abusive situation for so long that became their normal response. Their body's normal response is in fight or flight all the time, right? And so one of the things that can be really, really valuable and useful. I don't have I didn't come from a space of where I was, I had to deal with post-separation abuse, but I do come from a background where I've experienced a lot of trauma. I was in the military. I went to Iraq. I was, I came from a crazy childhood. And so I know what it's like to have, PTSD from different types of stuff and getting sucked up back into that. And one of the biggest things that helped me was mindfulness practices, right? Just practices where I am intentionally calming myself. And doing that on a daily basis can be really, really powerful, where you're just like, you spend time every morning, every evening, just, getting connected to your breath, just, taking deep breaths, just reminding yourself that you're safe,
Yeah.
reminding yourself that everything's okay right now, reminding yourself that, you're fine, and just getting your nervous system to calm down, doing that over and over and over again and getting into the habit of it can
Yeah.
really help you so that you're not, uh, attacking people or freaking out or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And
Yeah.
it's difficult, right? It's a difficult thing to deal with, but you can, you
Yeah.
can. And I saw somebody on here saying that they can't get out, right, or they can't do this or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, right? I get that,
Yeah.
and that thought process, that belief system that you can't do it will keep you stuck in it. Right. And so what we need to do is shift that over. And instead of saying, I can't, say, how can I? Right. How can I do this? So that, because as soon as you switch that over to how, suddenly it creates maybe there's a possibility here. Maybe I can actually do this. Now I just need to work on, how can I do this? What can I do? What's the first step? Right. And figuring out what the first step is then can trigger you to keep going down step after step after step after step until you're out of the situation, until you're in a new situation. Right. Maybe the promised land and this, beautiful, amazing future might be a little bit out of sight for you right now, but that first step isn't. Right. And so figure out what is that first step that I can take in moving forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to just come in there if that's okay, Matt. I was just going to say, it's so hard, isn't it? Because some of these women have had their children removed and given to the perpetrator, and it happens so much. Um, sort of being accused of alienation or different things, where they've had a very unmeasured response to that and had their children completely removed from them and given to a
Mhm.
perpetrator. So I think as well, not only is that obviously traumatizing, but then I suppose you're thinking, well, when you're moving on, when you get to a point where you are moving on, it's so difficult, isn't it, in society when maybe you meet a new partner or just friends, creating relationships and friendships and things. When people have that discussion, have you got children? And then it's so difficult then, because society unfortunately believes that when children are taken from mothers, there must be this awful thing that they've done, this sort of stigma. And I think that is
Mhm.
another sort of contributing factor to that. But what I
Right.
will say is, I don't think there's anything that you can say really, but other than what you were talking about then, you were describing with mindfulness. Now, whatever trauma that you've been through, whatever it is, no matter how bad, having that mindfulness practice, I think every day is absolutely essential. I really, really do. And in my own healing journey, I think, just being able to whether it's meditate or to take yourself out into nature, to go out walking, whatever that looks like for you, is having that time for yourself to reflect as well and heal. And I think that is so important. And as you said, if you practice that, when these traumatic things come back and these triggers, it's a little bit easier as time goes on to manage those triggers and those re-traumatizations, because you're training your nervous system to know that it's safe and that you're in the here and now and you're okay. You've come this far, and no matter what's happened, you're here and you're okay and you're safe. Easy thing to say, I know, and more difficult to do, but to give yourself that time and that grace, I think is essential to anyone's healing process and being able to move forward. And whether that's, as I said, to go into new relationships or not, but it's so important, isn't it, to start that healing process, I guess. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, just moving towards, because most people, what we do is we just live our lives, and we aren't consciously, attempting to create the experiences that we have. And it's very important to get out of, especially, coming out of a traumatic situation, get out of just being reactive all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
that being reactive that takes all of your power away. It takes
Yeah.
all of your control over your life, right?
Yeah.
And what you have to do is start finding places that you can take control, because the more that you focus on taking control, the more control you'll have.
Yeah.
There's some things that are out of your control, right? That some things that are going to happen that aren't going to, end up working out for you. There's a few women in here that mentioned how, they can use the system against you.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and that's true. You know what I mean? Like somebody mentioned, like the courts favor people that have money, because of, lawyers and things like
Yeah.
that. And there's a lot of truth in that, right? And
Yeah.
so, and that sucks, right? Like, I'm not going to take that away from you. I'm not going to say, hey, like, you should think this. But what I will say is, start focusing on things you do have control over.
Yeah.
What can you take control over?
Mhm.
How can you kind of start with your own experience and say, okay, how can I control my own emotions and my, and how I'm feeling on a daily basis? If you do have a lot of negative emotions built up, which you might, it can be really powerful to start releasing them, right? There's a lot of different practices out there that you can do for that. There's one of my favorites is there's a lot of somatic practices, which basically usually involves moving your body to let go of emotions. Just spend some time, letting go of those emotions, maybe experiencing them fully and letting go of them. A lot of times we can become numb because there's so much emotion that's built up, and we're afraid of experiencing it. We're afraid
Yeah.
of feeling it because it feels so negative, right? But if you don't experience that stuff, it'll just stay and harbor within you.
Yeah.
And so you have to experience it. You have to let it out. You have to let go of it so that you can create space for new experiences, for new emotions that you want to feel. And so,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I know a lady actually, she comes in every now and again and she'll do the sort of semantic healing. Her name is Charlotte Budd. I'll just give her a shout out. I don't know if she's watching today, but she's amazing. And she, again, another survivor of this post-separation abuse. And, she does amazing things. She'll do sound baths and all different techniques. Which are very, very helpful. So I just wanted to give her a shout out there because she is wonderful. I think she does online work as well. So if anyone is interested, I'll try and get some information on that out later as well. So you have some contact details as well.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Depending on where you are in the world, there's
Yeah,
different things that are
yeah,
available. Like the
yeah,
UK is really good. I live in Germany right now.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll pop into London because I'm a big fan of doing like breath work and
yeah.
sound baths, which you were talking
Mhm,
about, and that kind of stuff,
mhm,
because it's great.
mhm.
It's a great way to release emotion even experience emotion or get connected with emotion that
Yeah,
maybe you don't normally connect to in your day-to-day life. And so you can if you're not in the UK, let's say you're in Poland, or you're in, there's somebody in here saying they're from Botswana, the Philippines.
okay. Yeah,
There's things that you can find online as well, right? It doesn't
absolutely.
just have to be in person, because even here in Germany, I'm in Germany right now. There's not a lot of that stuff here.
Okay.
So which is why I have to fly up to London to get my fix,
Yeah.
um, or the Netherlands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but it's important to get on that healing journey, to get a part of some kind of community or something where you can start talking to people, where you can start moving forward. Melinda says, how do you heal from trauma if you continue to be re-traumatized?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's
It's
a good
not
question.
easy. It's not easy,
Yeah,
is it?
it's not easy. Yeah, absolutely. Um, there's, it's about, in my opinion, it's about the little steps, right?
Yeah, of
It's
course.
about
Yeah.
saying, how do I start protecting myself more? How do I make sure that I'm not, for the most part, the best of my ability? How do I get into situations or start helping myself get out of as many things as I can that keeps re-traumatizing me, and start getting into a place where I can heal and I can take care of myself and I can work on myself. We were talking earlier about this idea of like resetting your nervous system and
Yes.
like calming yourself down. Well, there's
Yeah.
there's other things that you can do as well.
Mhm.
I'd say that that's probably one of the first steps, but another
Mhm.
step is like, especially if you come from an abusive situation, you might start looking at yourself as this person who isn't really deserving of love,
Yeah.
or deserving of having your voice heard, or
Yeah.
deserving of being seen, or all kinds of different things, right? And so
Yeah.
part of that is like rebuilding the image that you have of yourself and who you are
Absolutely.
as a person who's worthy and deserving of love, of being valued, of being treated well. Because if you don't, you might end up getting into a pattern. Like I
Absolutely.
we work with like one-on-one, we work with thousands and thousands of women every year, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I've talked to so many women who have been, they get into a pattern of it, right? I was talking
Mhm.
to a woman a few months ago who I think she was in uh, like 10 or 12 relationships in her life,
Mhm.
and every
Mhm.
single one of them was an abusive situation, right? And she would leave, and then she would go into another abusive situation, and she would leave, and then go into another one. And you want to make sure that you're not doing that, right? You
Yeah.
want to make sure
Yeah.
that you're, obviously, it seems like, well, why would anybody want to go into an abusive, traumatic situation like that?
Mhm.
And one of the reasons why that happens is because of the way that you see yourself,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
what's going on, and who you connect with, and who you attract, and who you allow into your life has a direct relationship to what's going on within you, right? And if you believe that you're not worthy, if you believe that you just deserve to be treated like crap, it's going
Yeah.
to be really easy for you to allow somebody who thinks that same way about you into your life, right? And so you have
Yeah.
to shift the way that you see yourself. You have to shift your emotions. You have to shift your nervous
Mhm.
system and
Yeah.
come from a stronger, more empowering place. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a transformative process, isn't it? And it is a process, it's a combination of things. And for me, I mean, I remember a time where, I had agoraphobia. I couldn't leave the house. I didn't realize how I felt about myself. But looking back now, I had absolutely no self-esteem. I felt like I wasn't worthy of even having friendships. Um, I just felt like I wanted to hide from the world because I felt so angry as well with the world and what it had done to me. That's how I felt, But my whole self-image, I suppose, and my self-worth was at the bottom of the pile, worse probably than it's ever been. Um, but what that did do is force me, and this is not victim blaming myself at all, not even slightly, but it forced me to sort of almost look in the mirror and say, well, who am I? Why have all my life I've been in abusive relationships? What am I doing? Am I doing something? And it was never about me being, not really being too kind and, you know, being too empathetic. And I like being that person. I can still be that person. I can still be kind. I can still be empathetic. I can, probably more so than I've ever been, actually. But I've learnt to love myself first, and not in a I love myself big headed way. My cup is always full. Otherwise, I can't give anybody anything, or myself, not my children, not my friends around me, not my relationships. So my perception of myself has changed. And that took so much work to do that. But I did it, and it's still something that I practice every day, is to make sure that if I can see myself spiraling into negative thoughts about myself, talking unkindly about myself, beating myself up because I'm my biggest critic, then I say to myself, stop, Sarah, look at what you've achieved, look at where you've come, look at what you've been through. You know, you've got a lot to give to the world, and I think people can take that pain and on their journey, and they can create something out of that that's
Mhm.
very, very powerful, you know. So yeah, yeah, quite deep, I know, but yeah, it's just been a quite a process, a long journey, but it's been worth it. And my life has changed because of it. And my friendship groups have changed because of it. Probably a smaller circle now, but that's okay. I'm okay with that, I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, if you're listening to Sarah right now and you're like, man, that's kind of far away from where I'm at.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay, right? It's
Yeah.
okay. Like
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
talking about. It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
baby steps,
Baby
and it's
steps. Baby
yeah,
steps.
and
It's
it's
bit by
it's
bit.
starting. Yeah, yeah, and just starting out, but if you need to come from a place of, like, um, I need to just protect myself, and you're in reaction mode. It's okay, right? It's
Yeah.
okay wherever you are, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. It's fine,
Absolutely.
right? And what we're talking about is kind of moving into this new realm of taking back control and
Yeah.
saying, you know what? I'm no longer going to allow myself to to be a victim. Yeah, I was victimized. These things did happen to me. What I mean, we're not taking that away from ourselves.
No.
But what we are saying is you have the power, right? You have the
Yes.
power to create something new for yourself, something
Yeah.
where you're not going to continuously be traumatized and go back into these situations over and over again. It doesn't matter what your past looks like. It doesn't matter how many times you've gone back or how much you've
Exactly.
gotten sucked in or anything like that. You're creating something new for yourself. And the only way to really do that is to start looking at it and saying, okay, where can I take control? Where can I have my power? And
Yeah.
just taking more and more power until you've taken it completely, right? Like my when I was when I turned 18, I joined the military. And when I joined the military, suddenly I was around a lot of people that were, I went and became a Navy SEAL, which, if you don't know what that is, it's like a very difficult military training that you have to go through. And most of the people that were in that were like, I mean, they were like, people that were just going after life, right? And it was really cool for me to be around a lot of these people because I learned so much from being around them.
Mm.
But then I would go back to my family, right? And they had different habits and behaviors, and they had a different vision of who I was, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how toxic they were until I went back and started spending time with these people. And I was like, whoa, these people are so toxic,
Yeah.
they would try to suck me back into that, right? They're like, oh, like normally you're one that's, like doing these things too. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not who I am anymore. And then they
Yeah.
would just, pick at me and pick at me and pick at me until eventually I would just, break down and, lash back out at them. Right. And I was like, okay, I need some time away from these people. That's it. I have to get away from them for a while. And so I spent a few years where I didn't have a lot of contact with my family because I needed to take care of myself. I needed to heal. I needed to come from a better place where when I did reconnect with my family, I wasn't so sucked into all the nonsense that
Yeah.
they would want to suck me into. Right. And I could protect myself. And then for a while, I mean, there's still people in my family that I don't talk to, at
Mm.
least not much, like if they reach
Yeah.
out to me, I might, say hi or like, hey, yeah, I still love you, whatever. But I can love them from afar,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and I can, accept them for who they are, which, some of the people in my family are, alcoholics and drug addicts and, all kinds of different things. I can accept them for who they are, and
Yeah.
I can love them and I can want the best for them. And I don't have to allow them into my life if I don't want to. Or if I'm
Absolutely.
in a place where I feel, like I'm unsure about things, I definitely don't want these people around me. Right. And so, part
Yeah.
of it's just about saying, okay, like let's create something better. So Melinda says, I don't have anywhere to go to get help. She says that
Oh,
she's in the USA. Sarah,
Okay.
can you talk a little bit about like where somebody should go to get some help? Maybe you can tell a little bit about your website, or
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
can find more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the work that we do, it's remote anyway. So at the moment, the peer support groups, they're women from usually England and Wales in the UK. We are expanding to another peer support group, which will be starting in January. But I am more than open to, because let's remember, this is for a sense of community. This is so that women, sorry, my dog barking, so that women have that sense of community, and that they have others that understand. So it doesn't matter what country they're in, where they are in the world, they're predominantly dealing with the same traumas and the same issues. So I am more than open to looking into that in the new year, is to open up a group so that, internationally, women can come together, because we know this is a global issue. It's not just happening here, it's happening everywhere. And you would all from all parts of the world be more than welcome into a peer support group where we could all have discussions about what's happening to us, and know that people care, and also the good thing with that is you may find that there are other people in areas near yourself, and they might also have tips and resources that they can share with you of things that may be local to you, and that's something that I'm more than happy to help you with as well. Obviously, in terms of the law, I can only really make suggestions and give information on the UK law. But of course, I'm more than happy to look, elsewhere around the world where there are different resources for people, different legal information. I network with family law solicitors, not just in this country, but in other countries as well. Help people network and make contacts as well. The other thing is, I think it depends. It depends really where you are, in terms of whether this is domestic abuse and you're still within that relationship, whether you're thinking of leaving, or whether you have left and you are living through post-separation abuse. It depends where you are to the type of help that you get. So, for example, there might be some women out there now that might be coming to a realization that perhaps they are a victim of domestic abuse, and they're thinking, how can I get out safely? The first thing I would always say to them is, first and foremost, never, ever tell your perpetrator or your partner that you are thinking of leaving or end the relationship, because that is when you are at most risk. So that would be the most important thing I could tell you. And then going from there, then I would suggest that you look at the domestic abuse services in your local area. And if you look on Google, there will be helpline for your country, your local area. Here you've got the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. I know in Wales we've got the Live Fear Free helpline. They're all over the world. You will have them in every country, so you can contact them, and they will give you local domestic abuse services who can help you safely get out of that relationship. So they can do a risk assessment, they can give you a safety plan and advise you on the safest way to get out of that relationship. So I wouldn't do it without the domestic abuse services, and don't tell the perpetrator that you're planning it. Otherwise, it's going to make your escape really, really difficult, okay, and much more dangerous. Once you're out of that relationship, sometimes you find that the support will drop, because from the domestic abuse services that are under-resourced worldwide, they are trying to help you safely get out. Once you're out, they will probably signpost you or keep you on for a certain amount of weeks, but that support often tails off. So that's when you're at a point where you could be going in towards post-separation abuse now, and you need people who can support you with that. For example, you could find, you wake up in the morning and you serve with court papers, or you're having a phone call from the police or a visit from the police where there's been malicious allegations made against you. And in those situations, I would contact your domestic abuse service again, just to let them know what's happening, because very often this can be looked at stalking, harassment as well. And they will be able to provide you, hopefully, with some support, or if they can't do it themselves, like organizations and agencies that can. But I think the key is to keep talking about it as well to people you trust. Don't shut people out of your life. Keep good people around you, the good people that you trust, good, genuine people. They're the people that you need right now, not the people that are going to put you down, not the people that are going to victim blame you. Why didn't you get out sooner? That kind of thing. You need to be around people that are willing to show kindness, to validate you, your experience. It's very important to be around those types of people and to try to keep yourself away from the people who are going to bring you down at that point. You need good people in your life to help you through that. You really do. I was lucky. I've got a wonderful sister. My sister helped me through some of the worst times. I was very lucky to have her. Sadly, I lost both my parents through the family court process, and I was very, very close to them. And I lost them, which was a huge, huge loss and void in my life at a very, very difficult time. But I was very, very fortunate to have a wonderful sister who I'm very close to, and that really, really helped me. So having good people in your life really, really helps. Please reach out to the services, and you're very welcome to contact me later. I can put all my details on later, my website, my email address, any way that you can contact me, and then I can help you to find the support you need if we can't. But if we can, we absolutely will. You're not alone. There's always somebody who can help you.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, just remember, you do need people.
Yeah.
Like it can help you so much to even just have supportive people that you can trust. Somebody, it's common that manipulators and abusers will try to get you away from family members, from people that support you, and try to isolate you as much as possible, because then they're your only support system, and then you have to go back to them over and over and over again, but then they're manipulating you and abusing you and doing all these other things. And so it's very, very important to have other people. So also, if you have any questions, we're going to be doing some question and answer here. So if you have any questions about your situation, or something that's going on with you, or anything that you want to talk about, go ahead and ask your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them here in a minute.
Yeah.
So Nadine says, what to do when they brainwash your children against you?
Okay.
It's a great question. Did you have something you wanted to say specifically?
Yeah, I follow the work of a coercive control expert. She's an academic called Emma Katz. She's world renowned. She does some wonderful work around this, and she's released some papers and different things on it. And I think the message that she tries to get across is, when the children go to contact with somebody who is being derogatory about you, bringing you down in front of them, creating a different view, really sabotaging that relationship between you and your child during that contact. Not only does that change the way they think about you, but when they come back from contact, what you can also find as well is that they lash out at you, and you are their safe place, I guess, at that time. They come back from a perpetrator, they're upset, they've had to go there for contact, they might be lashing out at you, they might not be very nice to you. But I think she says the best way to deal with these kinds of things is just to spend as much quality time with your children when you can, to be yourself around them. Try to still be that parent, that mother. I know it's so difficult when you're so worried and frightened about potentially having the children removed from you, about the way they're treating you because of your ex-partner, but it's just trying to be as much as yourself and be natural around them, be yourself, and just try to spend as much time with them as you can and have good quality time together. Because I think that way you're showing them that you're not that person. You're showing up as who you are. You're a good person. You're their mother. And as they get older, they will see what's really happening. But I think the worst thing to do, again, is react to it. And I know it's really easy. I've done it myself, where you react to it. You can't understand why they're coming back with this attitude or saying these hurtful, horrible things to you. And nobody just wants to let that go because it's hurtful. But I think sometimes you have to take a step back and you have to think to yourself, well, why are they behaving like this? I need to be me. And what I find when you do that, suddenly they sort of come back a little bit to the child that you knew. You start seeing them. And I know it's traumatic because they have to go back to contact perhaps every week or whenever it might be, every fortnight, and you have to deal with it again and again. and it is tiring, but just give them that time that you can. Don't push them when they're not in the mood to be pushed. I wouldn't ask them what happened when you went there. What did they say? Just let them come back, let them be, let them vent, and then try and spend that quality time again with them, as the time goes on, really. I don't know if you've got anything else there to add to that, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, you said what I was thinking, and the only other things is I wouldn't, don't try to, um, change the story with them, right? In terms
Yeah.
of like, trying to defend them or defend yourself against the attacks or whatever, or like overcorrecting, some of the things that the other person said about you or whatever, right? Just be there for the kid, be a stable support system, be, loving, be kind, be everything that you can for them. The child will, probably end up having some of their own problems, growing up as a result of this,
Yeah.
and that sucks, but they're on their own path, right? And eventually they'll start becoming old enough and smart enough to see what's actually going on and be like, wow, you know what? My dad said this, but my mom was actually like this. And she was so loving and kind and supportive, and she was always there for me.
Absolutely.
Like maybe that isn't, maybe my dad was actually the problem the whole time, instead of getting into a battle, where you're just trying to fight back and you're trying to, just
Absolutely.
get all that stuff. This is definitely the place to be the bigger person,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just connect with your child and love your child the way that you can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I
Cool.
can't see any of the questions, Matt. I don't know if you can read them.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
there's we have probably a couple hundred comments here. Ashley says, "What do I do if every time I try to break free, he threatens to ruin my life or kill himself?"
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question. This is classic manipulation right here. And so the best thing in my opinion for you to do is one, first off, don't worry about the whole killing himself stuff, right? It's just straight up manipulation, right?
Yeah.
And the whole thing about threatening to ruin your life, like what I would look at is like, what does that mean? What does that really look like? Is he actually able to ruin your life? And in certain ways he might be able to. And so what you want to do is to like what Sarah was saying before, where she was like, don't tell him, that you're going to be leaving. That's where you want to start. Is you want to start with, be sneaky, go your
Yeah.
sneaky, do your
Yeah.
sneaky thing, and
Absolutely.
start building up your own protections, start figuring out ways to make sure that he can't ruin your life, right? What would that need to look like?
Yeah.
Right. Start getting some support. If you're like, hey, I just have no idea how to deal with this or whatever, start finding people. I'm actually I'm going to post the Peepso website. So if anybody
Thank
wants to
you.
go to the Peepso website, you can go. I just posted
Thank
in the
you.
chat. Go get some support. Go start talking to people about this and figuring out like, what are my options here? Right? This is my situation. Start talking to people, start finding out what your options can be in this situation so that you can protect yourself to the best of your ability when you end up leaving. And then when you leave, just get out of there, right? Don't worry about it. And then start protecting yourself from
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. And it is just exactly as you said, when a perpetrator tells you that they're going to kill themselves if you leave, that is classic coercive controlling behavior. It is screaming in neon lights to me. It is so common as well. And of course, what that does is it makes you feel guilty. It makes you feel bad. How will I live with myself if anything happens? And they know that. They know that. So you need to think to yourself, that is just manipulation. He's not going to do it. And do you know what? And I know this probably sounds harsh, but if he did, that is not your fault anyway. That is not your fault. Okay. So I would try and push that aside for a second. And then just like Matthew said, it's looking for support, looking at what your options are, reaching out to family lawyers if you can, if you're able to do that, and go through things like your finances. What are they likely to be able to do in a financial arrangement or a court dispute? What are they likely, look at your assets, look at your home, who owns the home, who owns the, just try and again, take that emotion out and get that support and that help and look at things practically, do things step by step, so that when you have left and you've used those domestic abuse services, you've got out safely, you've also reached out at an early point to a family law solicitor, you've taken advice, so you're putting yourself already in an advantageous place. You're protecting yourself early on and you're preventing any harm. And a lot of women are not going to think of doing that because they're going to be in a real emotional state, understandably, but it's trying to be clever, use your head, really think about what you're doing, because at the end of the day, you are protecting yourself from harm. This is self-defense, what you're doing, and it is essential. That's what I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, don't worry about him killing himself.
No,
Just get
absolutely
out of there.
not.
Just
Absolutely.
get out of there. I
Absolutely.
I had an ex whose mother used to always, if you do that, I'm going to kill myself. If you do that, I'm going to kill myself. And
Yeah.
she never did.
No,
She never did.
exactly. Exactly.
Is it possible that she would? Sure. And that's not, that's not on you. That's on
That's
them.
not on you.
They have their own issues, their own mental and emotional issues that they have going on that they need help with, and not getting it. And so now they're putting it on you, and you don't need to do it.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So Charlene says, I definitely relate to that. I am learning to love myself again, to put myself first, be gentle on myself. I'm currently reading a book. Do you both either have a book out we can read? Do you have a book, Sarah?
Not yet. Not yet, but I feel one coming on. Yeah, not yet. But when I do, I will let you all know. It's work in progress.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of books. I don't think any of them specifically deal with abuse, but if you need some help and some support, I recommend joining my community. I have a community called the Goddess Community on Facebook. If you just look up the Goddess Community, you'll find it. You can join that, and there's a lot of support, a lot of supportive people in there, and so you can get help there as well if you need that.
I do actually know a lady called Michelle Eldin. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in there quickly. A lady called Michelle Eldin has got a private Facebook group as well for women who've been through post-separation abuse and trauma. So I'll find her details and pop them over to you as well, Matt. Perhaps we can circulate them out as well.
Yeah, for sure. So Elizabeth says, I never want to be in an abusive relationship again, so I don't want a relationship at all. Everyone wants a companion to make positive memories with, but it feels too great a risk because people are now dangerous. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Elizabeth, and I think that's a common feeling that's going on right now. There's just, the whole dating industry is traumatizing people right now. Because there's so many abusers out there who will just hurt you in so many different ways. And it's really easy to get sucked into them because remember that, as the quote goes, the devil doesn't show up with horns and a cape. Exactly. He shows up as everything that you thought that you wanted. Right. And so there's a lot of people out there that will fake their way into your lives, trying to show that they're the, perfect person for you, and they'll hurt you. And so it's normal and rational to look at that and say, you know what, maybe I just want to be single. Maybe I should just stay single. And there's nothing wrong with that because being single is better than being in an abusive relationship. Absolutely. Yeah. I will say that there's nothing better than being in an amazing relationship. And so, if you're at a place right now, Elizabeth, which you are, where you think that you don't want a relationship at all, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you spent the rest of your life in that place, it's okay, right? We all have our own paths in life. If you keep moving forward here on your healing journey to, heal your system, heal your emotions, start learning how to trust again, start learning how to trust yourself. That's where I would start if I were you, is focusing on trusting yourself. Because a lot of times if we keep getting into bad situations, abusive situations, or we were in one for a long time, you might now not trust yourself to get yourself into a good situation, right? And that's totally understandable, right? And so what you want to do is start with, how can I trust myself? How can I trust my word? How can I trust my intuition? And so, Sarah and I were talking about baby steps a little bit ago. This is where you want to start taking baby steps, right? So start finding friends. Stop, just get the whole dating and relationship thing out of your vocabulary altogether and start focusing on friends, right? Start focusing on being around people that you can trust, being around people that are safe, being around people that will, help you calm your nervous system when you're around them, because you know that there's no threat there, right? And so you can relax and you can calm down and you can start, when you start doing that, what ends up happening, there's this idea of like a home, right? I've talked about this a lot on my stuff. That if you go to if you spend a lot of time, it's one of the reasons why people get back into abusive relationships over and over and over again, is because we don't attract what we want. We attract what is most familiar, right? So if what's most familiar to you is being in a situation where somebody doesn't value you, you're going to go back to that situation over and over and over again until you create a new home for yourself, a new emotional home, a new relationship home, right? Which is why we're talking about like spending time with these people that rest your nervous system. That's why we talk about, doing mindfulness practices so that you can get into a place where you're experiencing something different, because over time that will become most familiar. Right. And then if something triggers something different for you, you're going to be like, I'm not going back to that. This is my new home. And I want to stay in a place where I feel good, I feel strong, I feel powerful, right? I feel like my voice can be heard. I feel like somebody values me and respects me, because that's what I've been experiencing for a while now. And so the first step for you isn't to jump back into a relationship and try to make it work this time. The first step for you is to create a new home for yourself, a new experience of what is familiar, so that you can start getting into healthier situations instead of toxic ones. So that you start, when you heal, what happens is you can start seeing things in other people that you used to not see because you were so reactive before. And suddenly, something will happen and your intuition will trigger, your radar, your radar will pop up, right? And you'll be like, beep, 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 beep. This is not the right place. There's something off here. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to, retreat from this. And that's what you want to do. Right. Like you can, you can be single for the rest of your life. That's okay. You can, go meditate in a cave for the rest of your life. That's okay. And, relationships, healthy, supportive, relationships where people actually value you and love you and give you the security that you need are some of the most powerful, amazing, life-giving things that you can experience. And so, I suggest that you continue moving forward here. Did you want to say something to that, Sarah?
Yeah, sorry, my dog decided to start barking there, so I muted. Yeah, and I think intuition, I agree with everything you just said. You literally took the words out my mouth. I mean, I so agree with everything that you just said there. Sorry, I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. Can you still hear me okay, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I think intuition, again, that is huge. Intuition, very often when we look back at situations that we've been in, sometimes you get this sort of niggling feeling that something feels wrong or not right, but you say yes anyway, you know. And I think that intuition, as you get to know yourself, as you get to heal through these baby steps that we've just talked about, that intuition, it is your radar. It is a built in protection. I really, really strongly believe that. And looking back at my life, every time I've gone against my intuition, I've done something I don't feel comfortable with, for example, things don't work out. They really don't. Things go wrong. But when you start to trust your intuition, I feel, for me anyway, things have started to go right, you know? And it's learning to trust yourself, trust your own judgment, you know? And as Matthew was saying, you know, even if it's starting with friends, just to have the right friends in your life and be able to trust yourself that these people are good people. They're not going to sort of stab you in the back or hurt you or betray you in any way. They're just straight up genuine people. And when you can trust that you can have those people in your life at some point, perhaps down the line, if you did want to get into a relationship, then you have learned to trust your own judgment by then. So the chances of being sucked in by a perpetrator are hopefully less. And I also think the green and red flags, as I call them, to relationships, you know, I think knowing the signs as well early on is the best prevention if you are going to date anyone again. You know, if you've decided that that is something that you want to do, it's making sure as well that you are aware of what the red flags are and what the green flags are too, you know. And certainly, as Matthew was saying, when somebody turns up in your life, okay, and they're everything that you want them to be, right? They're listening to what you're saying. They're gathering information on you, whether you know it or not. Those awkward silences where you're filling in the space, they are learning everything about what you want, who you want in your life, who you want to show up for you, and they will be that person for you for a while. You know, where that mask they will wear, it will be that very person. So they will love bomb you. They may send you flowers. They'll shower you with gifts potentially. They will tell you everything you want to hear. You know, they will tell you what a wonderful, wonderful person you are. And sometimes that can be over the top. And then they'll suddenly withdraw. You know, if you, and that's where your intuition can kick in as well. If that's something there feels off or not right, you know, it probably is. So look out for the love bombing. You know, look out for things like actions and words. Do they match? You know, somebody can tell you anything they want. You know, you can think, wow, this is an amazing person. But when what they're telling you doesn't show up and it doesn't materialize, and those actions are not matching what they're saying, then it's a facade, you know? And yet, if you have somebody in contrast to that, who's perhaps a bit more mediocre, a bit perhaps not so in your face and not so much showering you with that much affection, but somebody who is constantly showing up for you, is constantly behaving in the same way, you know, somebody who says they'll do something and they will, you know, consistency. You know, we're looking for something to happen, but it doesn't. Something bad to happen, it doesn't. And you know, there's good things to look for as well, isn't there? But exactly as what Matthew said is, just take relationships out of the equation for now. You know, just, I think, learn to get to know yourself, learn to trust yourself, and get yourself into a place where, you know, you're feeling better, you're feeling a bit more confident in the world, you know, and it is baby steps, but there's no need to rush or jump into a relationship. And there's certainly no need to think that if you're not in a relationship that you've somehow failed, because that's not the case. That's not the case at all. You're so much better off as an empowered individual than you are being in an abusive relationship and putting up with that, you know, poor abusive behavior, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%, 100%. So don't get into a situation just to get into a situation, you know. And I know that can sound, you know, difficult, and well, you don't know my situation, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and you know, one of the challenges that a lot of people have is that they will remember the good times, right? That's what they will focus on. is all of the good times, and they will ignore. And this is usually what happens, which is, Sarah was talking about, like, stop going for the guy that you're just like totally like, into, because what happens a lot of times is when if you're attracted to, let's just say, I don't know, but if you're attracted to toxic behaviors, which a lot of people are, I found out that I was, right? And you get into, and you find that, like, the people that are most attractive to you are toxic people, then you want to go for something different, right? Because what happens is that you will convince yourself that you're in love. You'll convince yourself that, this person's the one. You'll start calling him that, and then you'll, like, put him on a pedestal, and then like, the negative things will come. You'll be like, yeah, but he's the one, right? And you don't want to do that, right? Because that will just get you into it's an addictive cycle, right? There's an addiction that comes with the highs and lows of a traumatic situation.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to jump back into that addictive thing and think that it's love, when in reality it's just your addiction to trauma that's getting you into it, right? And so like I said, what you want to do is start creating something else that is more familiar. You want to create something else that is what you normally get yourself into. And that way you can experience what real love feels like. You can experience what really being supported and, having somebody that's secure, like what Sarah was talking about was, this consistency thing, right? Where the words and actions are in alignment and they're consistent over time. Right. And, you're not going to get that in a abusive relationship, a toxic relationship. And so, like what we're saying, don't think about relationships. Don't sleep with guys, right? Just take that completely off the table. Don't sleep with any guys at all, right? Just don't do it. It's going to confuse things. It's going to, it's going to make things way more difficult for you when you get physically involved with someone. Just be friends, right? And if somebody doesn't want to be friends, that's fine. You're working on yourself right now. Maybe when you've decided that you want a relationship, you can talk to them again. But if they don't want to talk to you and be friends with you, they're probably not going to be a good partner for you anyway.
Absolutely.
Right.
Matt, I'm just going to get a charger. You carry on. I'm just going to grab a charger because I can see my battery's about to go. You carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So yeah. Just remember that. So. All right. Melinda says, I wish I had gotten a family that wasn't so toxic. Yeah, you know what? I wish I had a family that wasn't so toxic too. But let me tell you something, Melinda, that I experienced as a result of having a toxic family. And it's that now I know more about toxicity than most people out there, right? And the reason that I know more about toxicity than most people out there is because I experienced a toxic family, right? And so I wouldn't be able to do this work to the ability that I can do this work if it wasn't for having a toxic family, if it wasn't for getting into weird toxic relationships. I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to help you right now. In the same, we're looking at your feet there, Sarah.
So I'm so sorry. My battery's going to go and the charger's not working, which is brilliant. For some reason, my charger's not working. Technology's killing me today. I was just going to say, hopefully it won't turn off, but I just wanted to quickly say as well. Oh, my dog's barking now. Carry on, Matthew. You better carry on because at the moment I'm not doing very well. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
My phone is going to turn off in a second. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. If you want to work on that real quick, I'll just talk to people about this. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You carry on,
okay.
Matthew. I'm gonna
All
have to love and leave everyone now because I can see my battery is literally going to die, and my dog seems to want to go out. So I am so sorry, last minute. But I'm gonna have to shoot off. I'm so sorry, guys.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Sorry.
Thanks for
It's
being
lovely to
with us.
speak to you, Matthew, and hopefully we will catch up soon. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers. Um, cool. So what I was saying there was that uh, the things that happen in your life, the things that occur, the abusive relationships, the toxic family, all of that, you can look at it and be like, that's a curse, right? Here's the truth. If my parents were the people that I wish that they were, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. I wouldn't know the things that I know. I wouldn't create the things I've created. None of the things that have happened would have happened if I had the family and the relationships that I wish that I had. And so as much as it's a bit of a curse, it's also a bit of a blessing, because now I can help other people. And you might still be in a situation there where you look at it as a curse because it's cursing you right now. um, but eventually it might it could empower you if you're able to get through it, if you're able to come to the other side, if you're able to create a life that you really want. It might end up becoming a blessing for you, because you'll learn so much about yourself, you'll learn so much about the world, you'll be able to help other people who are in toxic or traumatic situations. So all right, so I'm going to end things right here. Thank you all for being with me today, for being with us. And if you want to check out Sarah's site and learn more about getting out of a toxic situation, you can go ahead and I put the link in the chat. So thank you all for being here, and I will speak with you again soon.